Hello, everybody. This is Jason Green. I'm the editor-in-chief and founder of TheArtsSTL, which you can find at TheArtsSTL.com. I'm here today to interview Aaron Walther about the Amoral Stingray, his new Kickstarter. Just a word of warning, Aaron Walther and I have worked together before. I'm the editor of his Robot Pulp series of sci-fi novellas. Aaron, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for doing this interview with me.
Sure thing. So let's start off. Who is the Amoral Stingray?
Well, the Amoral Stingray is mild-mannered teenager Duncan Daniels. And as the typical superhero origin goes, he's a social outcast with few friends. He struggles to meet girls and is like a regular target for bullies. But when a freak accident gives him superpowers, rather than become the altruistic hero that defends the downtrodden like himself, he decides to use his powers for his own personal satisfaction. Now, of course, this makes him a target for local vigilante superheroes, and soon he finds himself entangled in the world of supercrime.
So any particular, like, kind of classic comic origin stories that you were looking to tweak as you started developing his origin story?
Well, I mean, the Spider-Man origin was kind of probably the biggest one that was on my mind, just with the teenager, and the biggest change I made was that it was somebody who didn't have that like wholesome Silver Age home life. More modern kids, like millennial kids, are a little bit more isolated and kind of in their own worlds, and they're not really connected with their families the way like a lot of traditional superhero kids are, because they were all created in the 60s or earlier.
They don't have an Aunt May hovering over their shoulder all the time anymore, right?
Exactly, yeah. They're all on their phones by themselves, you know.
Yeah, kind of tonally it reminded me of, I'm not sure, are you familiar with the writer Jay Ferber?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so it kind of reminded me of kind of what he did with Noble Causes and Dynamo 5, where you kind of take kind of a Silver Age idea and say, okay, now if this happened today with the world being so much different than it was in the Silver Age, you know, how does that play out?
Yeah, that was basically the basic idea that I had, was just kind of like a new version of a superhero origin story, except it's really the origin of a supervillain, or of what could become a supervillain.
Right. So, yeah, I did appreciate, like, tonally you hit a very fine point in that, like, you know, some people would presume if you're making the superhero origin of a supervillain that it's kind of a parody, and this book is really funny, but you kind of isolated so much of the comedy in the form of the narrator. I guess, how did you find that balance to make this book funny without overstepping into parody?
I kind of took it on myself to make the narrator kind of the main character of the story, because I wanted Duncan to be somewhat of a silent protagonist. Somebody who the reader could kind of project themselves onto, and just kind of not have too much of his own personality directing the story. The idea for using the narrator in the way that I did actually came from I'm trying to emulate in my head what I imagine combining the two most influential comic book writers of all time, which would be, in my opinion, would be Stan Lee and Alan Moore. And that kind of became the vision for this book, was try to do something that kind of felt like either of them could have gone, like, they're definitely both influences on the story. And that's, like you said, with a lot of the comedy was, I've read a lot of the old Stan Lee books. I love the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko stuff, and he's actually pretty funny in a lot of his narration. Like, it's overwritten, like it's so overwritten, but you know, he can be funny. And so my book is probably a little overwritten too, but I was just trying to bring like a new, just like a little extra personality to the book that you wouldn't be able to get in a different medium. If it was a movie or a TV show, I don't think you would be able to make that type of narration work that well. I don't know. I'm over explaining it at this point.
No, I get you. I mean, you look at like you try and see a show like Dexter leaps to mind, where you have a
Hmm.
protagonist that is like narrating his life to the viewer constantly, and
Yeah.
like trying to do that in a superhero story in a kind of jokey way would be way over the top. But in the comic, it really works. It nails the tone and keeps the story moving. So
Yeah, thank you. That was the other reason I really went with the narrator angle, honestly, was to keep the story from being decompressed. I really wanted to. This was my attempt at writing a mainstream style 22-page issue, comic series, 4 issues long. I failed because the third issue, I think, was 20, ended up being 24 pages, and then the final issue I just gave up and went like 36 pages. I figured I'm self-publishing it, I might as well just we'll just go all out and give it the big climax.
the story's done when it's done, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So the other character that I got a big kick out of was Wi-Fi, especially the way in which you find out like just enough about him, but he's still very like mysterious and weird.
Hmm.
Um, tell us a bit about where that guy came from.
Yeah. Well, Wi-Fi, he's the low-level supervillain that takes Duncan under his wing. And for that character, I kind of wanted him to be the type of villain he's got his own morality, and he maybe even kind of views himself as a good guy, but he's not so naive or crazy to realize that everybody else thinks he's a bad guy, so he just kind of rolls with it. Um, I would say he's a reflection of the attitudes I see in a lot of fringe political activists these days. I specifically wrote him as kind of like a weird anarchist nihilist. He's got some kind of moral core, but it's impossible to figure out, what it is based off of just the things that he says and does. I tried to make him like he's a really likable and charismatic guy, and he kind of sounds, really intelligent, like he knows what he's talking about. But then, occasionally he'll like say or do something that's just totally crazy or weird, and just makes you question how together he really is.
So let's talk a bit about the art on the series. The first two issues are drawn by Kevin Bant. Tell us a little bit about how you found him and what you liked about his work on the book.
Oh, well, I'm a huge fan of Kevin's. Kevin, I met Kevin very early in at the beginning of my indie comic career. I think we met online. I posted an ad on Digital Webbing, which is a website for independent creators to hook up, and he responded, and I just really liked his portfolio, and we had done a few short comics together, and I'd been wanting to do a bigger project with him because I really liked his art, and he had self-published a few of his own stuff too. I was a big fan of his stuff. And so I pitched him the idea, and he liked it, and it was pretty simple like that. I would say part of the reason I wanted to work with Kevin on this book, and why I was really excited to work on it while I was also working on all these other comics that I was doing, was because we actually were working in the classic Mighty Marvel style. And so I was trying to like get that Stan Lee feeling. So Kevin actually, he plotted most of the issues himself. I gave him, there was no like real script. I gave him like a page by page breakdown of paragraphs just so that we would have like a basic idea for the pacing of the story. But I pretty much left everything else up to him. And then I added the dialogue and the narration afterwards, which is another reason why the narrator kind of became such a big character, because it was my way of linking the story together based off of just how he decided the page should look. Just because he was looking at it just visually, like this is a good story beat, and then it was kind of up to me to make it make sense in the actual story.
Sure, it's a really good tool in the writer's toolbox, fill in the blanks, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, Kevin, this is the tough, sad thing about working in indie comics is that there's not a lot of money in it. And Kevin has a family and a day job, and he got to a point where he really just couldn't keep up with it anymore. I think it was too draining on him. And so that's why he only illustrates the first 2 full issues, and then he did 9 or 10 pages in issue 3, and then we had to switch artists, and that's where the other 2, Alex Harner and Chris Junkin, come in.
Sure. Let's talk a bit about those guys. I know Chris McJunkin you've worked with before on Zero's Heroes, right?
Yeah. Chris has been my longest collaborator. He's drawn most of Zero's Heroes stuff for me. We've done a few other short stories that we're working on. Yeah, Chris is great. I actually pitched the idea for Amoral Stingray to Chris first before Kevin, and Chris turned it down. I don't know if he liked me saying this. Well, because it was he wanted to do something that was a little bit more all ages, the way Zero's Heroes was, and with Stingray, I was very specifically trying to go for a more mature tone. Mostly just with lots of foul language and cursing and stuff. And so, yeah, he said he'd rather just keep doing Zero's Heroes, because we were doing Zero's Heroes at the time. And I was like, okay, no problem,
Just keep drawing for me.
Yeah, just keep drawing. Yeah, as long as you're drawing something. Yeah. And my friend Alex, he's actually one of my oldest friends. Like I went to high school with him, and he was like my longtime comic book buddy. We trade comics all the time, and he is a great artist. I'm still always trying to get him to get into comics, but comics is a lot of work, and he's got a job and a family. But he actually did, speaking of Zero's Heroes, Alex actually did the original character designs for Zero's Heroes. Never drew any pages, but he kind of came up with a lot of the original concept art, the characters. And then he came on to Amoral Stingray to try and blend. I tried to make him the glue between the transition between Kevin and Chris, because I like Chris's style a lot. It's a little bit different than Kevin's. His style's a little more fluid. Chris has a huge influence by Eric Larson. I think you can just see it in his art, just like his faces and his figures really are very Larsonian. I like it for that. I'm a big fan of that 90s image stuff. So but Kevin has a lot more sharper lines in his art than Chris. So my friend Alex came in and drew some pages to try and bridge the gap to him, because I didn't want it to be too sharp of a transition in the middle of an issue, having to switch artists.
Sure. All right, so that brings us around to the Kickstarter. Tell us a bit about the Kickstarter you have running now and some of the rewards people can get if they hop on.
Well, I do have the Kickstarter up. We're 50% funded right now. It's been less than 2 weeks, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. I've never really run like a large Kickstarter before. I usually try to keep these things pretty small and manageable. I think I would go insane if I tried to raise like $50,000 to sell thousands of books. Like it would just make me go crazy. But
right.
It's most of the rewards really are just centered around the book. Like I really just want to get the book out there. So we have the book, and I have some nice prints done up by some other artist friends of mine. Just some really nice artwork. And then one of the other things that I am doing is that I'm giving away, well, not giving away, but you understand, as a reward here on the Kickstarter is
right.
A lot of original art from the book. So I've got 3 internal pages by Kevin. I've got the cover by Kevin, and the original art from the prints also. So I've got one by artist Buster Moody, who is just another awesome artist I love. I'm always like wanting to work with him more. So whenever I need somebody to do a pin up or a print, I really try to get him whenever I can. Chris McJunkin did a print, so you can get an original Chris McJunkin page. And also 2 other great artists, Christopher Harris and Greg McCrary. So yeah, that's all original art. That's, you know, obviously I understand that's a little more expensive than the books, but if you like collecting comic art like I do, this is a pretty good opportunity to get it. I try to keep it as low as possible. You know, and plus you're going to get all the books and stuff too. So.
Yeah, very cool. And of course, if it succeeds, is there a future for the Amoral Stingray after the first volume?
Well, you know, writers never run out of ideas. Like, I've got a million ideas that I could do for these characters, and there's so much that actually had to get cut out of this book just to like trim it down to a nice 4-issue story. I definitely would like to do a second book. It's not going to be a priority for me when we finish this Kickstarter, unless the Kickstarter like blows up beyond my wildest dreams and like, you know, people are like ramming on my door begging for more. You know, I'll turn around as fast as I can. But you know,
Right.
I make the biggest mistake that an indie creator can make, and that's to be working on multiple books at the same time. So I've got so many different projects in the works, and I try to just like cycle through them as fast as I can. So I have definitely more planned for Amoral Stingray. I can't say when I'll be able to get to it though.
All right, very cool. All right, Aaron Walther, the Amoral Stingray. Thanks for talking to me today. Find the Amoral Stingray right now on Kickstarter. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason.